Everybody, this is Greg Ryder, CEO and founder of Angel Investors Network. And man, I'm so excited to share this information news with you today. We got breaking news that I literally have been waiting for a long time. And a matter of fact, I even wrote a book about it. So now I can start marketing my book and doing some good stuff. But anyway, I'm super excited. I got Kendall Almerico on the line with us, and Kendall is one of the foremost legal attorneys in the country who's been a proponent of crowdfunding and the Jobs Act. He's been really helping in every facet of this since day one. So Kendall, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Hey, you're welcome, and I hope things are great there in sunny Southern California. I'm here I'm a stone's throw from the SEC where this all takes place, literally right out the window here, just a few blocks away here in Washington, D.C., but it's not sunny today. Today is a dreary day for weather-wise, but a wonderful day for crowdfunding.
Hey, we woke up and it was 56 degrees this morning. That's freezing.
Wow. It's probably warmer here.
Yeah, that's a little too cold for me. So Kendall, you've been involved in this crowdfunding. We'll talk about Bankroll and your crowdfunding platform, that kind of stuff. But let's talk about this new Title III of the Jobs Act, which is the equity crowdfunding piece for the small investor that was passed a couple days ago. Why don't you give us just a real cursor overview of it, and then I'll ask any questions that I have.
Sure. Well, back in 2012 in April, this law called the Jobs Act passed. And the part of it that everyone was so excited about, you and I have talked about, you wrote a book about it, Greg, is the crowdfunding portion, the true portion of this law where you can go online onto these portals that are going to come up. They're going to exist. They don't exist yet, but they'll be just like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, except instead of just pre-purchasing a product or putting your name in the credits of a movie, you'll actually be able to own a piece of the companies that you're investing in. On Kickstarter and Indiegogo, you don't own anything other than what you buy. You can't invest in the company. So this law changed 80 years of securities law and allows people to go online and invest in a company online. Anyone can do it. Anyone out there who wants to invest, you don't have to be rich, you don't have to be wealthy, you don't have to be well connected, and you can get in on the ground floor or in early stages in companies like no one was ever allowed to before. It's a game changer for small businesses and startups, Greg.
No, and that's exactly why I wrote the book. And by the way, I'm going to tease everybody who hangs on till the end of this Google Hangout, I'm going to give you a link where you can get a copy of my book for free. I'll send you this book for free, which is packed with all kinds of information about how to raise capital and the new laws. And you just pay shipping and handling. I'll send that to you. But with that being said, and again, you go back to, I'm one of these guys that say that capital formation is broken. You're an entrepreneur. You need $250,000, $100,000, $500,000, $1 million. Where do you go? You go stand in line to get on Shark Tank TV show, really? Right. So let's talk about it. And you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to share my screen while you're talking, because I know that you got a nice article on Entrepreneur Magazine. And I'm going to kind of just bring up that. So sure, as you're talking about what this means for entrepreneurs, let's just kind of go through this and let's break it down as far as here we are on my screen. I'm showing the entrepreneur.com. This is Kendall's article about equity crowdfunding. And let's talk about how much money we can raise. Let's just go through these points you got on here on this article that you did on entrepreneur.com.
Sure. Well, Greg, I've been writing the column on the Jobs Act and crowdfunding for Entrepreneur for a couple of years now. As you said, I've been involved in this industry ever since it really started in 2012. In fact, when the SEC rules came out last week, it was a huge announcement. 686 pages of rules about how you use equity crowdfunding. If you look in the footnotes, I'm actually cited in the footnotes about 40 times. So I've been involved with the process. I've given the SEC my comments, my suggestions. Luckily, in many cases, people like myself, and I'm not the only one, believe me, but people like myself have helped to form a law that really can be used. And now what can happen is anyone that wants to raise money, once this law goes live, and it goes live in May of 2016, but once the law goes live, anyone who has a business, you have to have a business. You can't do this on your own personal, matters. If you have a business, you're able to raise up to $1 million with this new law. And what you have to do to raise that money depends on how much you're raising and a lot of different factors. But the fact is, to the general public, it will look just like a Kickstarter campaign. It'll look just like a Indiegogo campaign. You'll go on, you'll watch a video, you'll see information about the company, but you'll also get to see some financial information information about the company that you don't get to see on an Indiegogo or Kickstarter. And if you decide you like the company and want to invest, you click a button, you pay for your shares right there online, you fill out some forms, and it's no different than checking out of Amazon and buying something. It's a very simple process. And all of a sudden, guess what? You now have invested in that company. You've bought shares in the company, in a private company. This isn't the stock exchange. This isn't going to Merrill Lynch or E-Trade and buying shares of Disney or one of these huge publicly traded companies. You're going in and buying stock in a private company that is new in many cases, or new and young and emerging in many cases, but you're investing at the ground floor, and that's where big opportunities come.
So my question to you is as this happens, I can't just go out onto the internet and raise money. I have to get listed with one of these approved portals, which is, let's talk about that just for a second. You got the FINRA approved portal, and then you just have, explain the two portal.
Sure. Well, what's going to happen with this particular type of crowdfunding is you'll have to do it through a FINRA approved funding portal, which is a brand new thing that doesn't exist. It's been created as a result of this new law. And what will happen is you'll go on a funding portal, which will look like Kickstarter. And for example, Bankroll right now is not a funding portal. The company that I run, Bankroll, allows you to invest in businesses in a different way, but it's not a technical funding portal yet because those things don't exist. They will exist next year. And Bankroll may well become a funding portal. But to do that, you have to get approval by FINRA, the body that governs the sale of securities in the United States. And then anyone in the general public can go on one of the FINRA-approved portals and buy the stock. They won't be able, people aren't going to be allowed to do this on their own website, for example, or start their own website and start selling these securities. You will have to do these transactions through a FINRA-approved portal.
No, that's okay. So that's, now for those who don't know what FINRA is, tell everybody what FINRA is real quick.
Well, FINRA, people think FINRA is part of the government. It's actually not. It's a sort of a quasi-governmental agency that oversees and penalizes people that are involved in the securities industry. So, for example, if Merrill Lynch did something illegal, or something improper under the laws, FINRA is the business. It's sort of a pseudo governmental agency that comes after, as a result of what the SEC would say needed to be done. They would go after Merrill Lynch. If someone commits securities fraud, not only can you be put into prison for that, but also FINRA would come after you with penalties and prevent you from ever selling securities anymore. So they're sort of this governmental police body that makes sure that people follow the rules of selling securities.
Gotcha. Okay, so now let's move on to the restrictions of what an investor or an individual can invest. And this is number 2 on your crowd on the entrepreneur side. So basically, tell us about the restrictions and the limits that people can invest when this does get actually implemented in May.
Well, what's going to happen is you'll go on a site, and let's say you love the company, and let's say they're raising $1 million, and let's say you're sitting at home and you've got $100,000 sitting in your bank account, and you want to put it all into this company. You can't. There are limits on how much anyone, even rich people, even wealthy people, are limited in the amount they can invest in each of these companies. So the law itself limits you, and I'm not trying to get too technical here, to the greater of a $2,000 investment or 5% of the lesser of your annual income or net worth if you have less than $100,000 of net worth or $100,000 of income. So you're limited to the amount of money you can put into one of these investments if you are under $100,000 of net worth or salary. If you're over the amount of $100,000 of income or net worth, you can invest up to 10% of your income or net worth in one of these investments. So the reason I know it sounds very crazy and people are going, huh? Well, the reality is when you go on a website, you're going to have to fill out a questionnaire as part of the checkout process that says how much money do you make and what's your net worth, and then they'll tell you how much you're allowed to invest. You're not going to have to sit there with an abacus and a calculator on your fingers and trying to figure this out. They'll tell you you're allowed to invest up to X number of dollars. But this was put into place because of concerns, whether right or wrong, that the SEC, they're creating a brand new law. 80 years of law gets overturned by this law. And the SEC basically wanted to put something in place to protect investors. They don't want people, grandma out there to spend her entire nest egg on a investment in a startup company, or, someone to get so excited by the hype that they write a huge check. There's going to be very, very strict limitations on how much can be invested in these companies by the very law, and you'll be limited once you go on one of these funding portals to do it.
So how will they police that? Is there going to be some checks and balances?
Well, this is the interesting thing. That was one of the things that I had written to the SEC about, and basically said, look, how do you police this? In essence, what happens is people will, when they come on a portal and decide they want to invest in one of these crowdfunding investments, they'll have to sell on their own, self-certify, this is how much money I make. You don't have to give anybody your tax returns or your W-2 or a pay stub. You just say, I make X number of dollars, and then it will calculate out based on how much you make and how much you have in net worth, how much you're allowed to invest. Who polices it? Nobody. The reality is, even though you're limited by the law to $100,000 total that you can invest in all of these types of deals in one calendar year, there's no mechanism in place in the law or anywhere else to police it. So one of the things that I had suggested to the SEC, which of course wasn't implemented, but maybe someday we will see, is that there should be some centralized depository of information for all of these funding portals. If there's 100 people out there taking these, investments from people, and people are putting in $2,000 here, $2,000 there, they can easily go over the limits without even potentially knowing it. Well, there's nothing to police that right now. It's really sort of a self-policing situation. And as a funding portal, you don't really have any duty to police it unless you know someone has actually gone over their limit. So if somebody calls you up and says, hey, Greg, I'm coming on your funding portal and I want to put 50 grand into one of these investments, but I already put 100 grand in over at so-and-so's portal, you at that point would have to shut them down. But if you don't actually know, there's no mechanism to police it. It's one of the flaws in the law that I hope at some point that they correct in the future.
Well, when I think of that, I think of it like this too. So a couple ideas or thoughts I have. One is, if you're an investor and let's say you have millions and millions of dollars, and you're a professional angel investor, which we have these guys, and they invest hundreds of thousands of dollars each year. It's like their way to go to Vegas. They love it, right? They love supporting entrepreneurs and capitalism. This is like an exemption, right? So I have the 504, the 505, the 506. And so if an issuer is using this exemption, these rules apply. Right. Let's say an issuer is using 506C, which we can talk about a little bit later. These rules don't apply, correct?
Absolutely. And in fact, Greg, you're about to hit the nail on the head here. You can actually, as a company, do one of these crowdfunding raises, offerings, and at the same time do a private placement to wealthy individuals that's at the exact same time. You're allowed to actually do concurrent with this law, which is really strange if you think about it. You can literally be going out to the general public with one offer and going to wealthy individuals in a private placement with a totally different offer at the same time, as long as you're not selling the exact same securities for two different prices. So it's a really strange provision in the law that a lot of us are wondering, wow, how is that going to play out?
Wow, so that's interesting. So basically, you can do the concurrent things as long as the terms of the offering are changed, even just the slightest amount.
Well, it's funny. It doesn't actually address that in the law. It just says you're allowed to do concurrent offerings. Just as a securities attorney, I look at it and I say, if I was advising a company and they said, well, look, we want to go sell some crowdfunding securities to the general public, and we want to sell some securities at the same time to wealthy people, accredited investors only, I would tell them you need to have totally different securities that you're selling. Because even though it's not in the law, it just makes common sense. You can't be selling one person something for one price and another person the exact same thing for a different price when you're talking about securities. It's price fixing or arbitrage. There's a lot of things that could go wrong if you did that. So the reality is they will go on, but people are going to find ways to play with that system, I can assure you.
Yeah. Well, in that scenario there, let's say you're dealing with a private placement under 506C and you're only working with accredited investors and your minimum investment is $50,000. You could throw in an extra warrant for them and you could justify.
Absolutely.
and you're just disclosing on the other end of this type of an exemption, hey, I'm giving these guys a warrant because they're writing big checks, right?
Right.
Or if you're writing a $500 check, you're not
make it
getting
a preferential voting rights or liquidation rights, maybe in one of the, you know, there's all kinds of things you can do with stock. You may give interest or dividends on one and not on the other. So there could be very similar securities, but they could be, you know, a little bit different enough to where you could justify charging different amounts. In addition to what you said, Greg, which is, you know, obviously the, you know, they're writing bigger checks, so they're getting a different product.
Right. Okay, so let's move on to the next one. So with this type of an exemption, the Title III, and do we have to have a minimum, maximum? Is there has to be an escrow account set up? Because again, number 3, it says, what happens if a company does not raise its goal amount?
Yeah. Oh, this is a big one. So this has been in the law from the beginning, and this is something that people have to understand. This is one of the biggest fraud prevention pieces of this law that I'm glad is in there, because every time I talk about this law, people go, oh, there's going to be so much fraud. People are going to steal. People are going to be using the money to buy a Maserati. And I hear that every day. And then I point out 3 or 4 things about this law, including this provision, which is when a company decides they want to raise money and they go out and do one of these equity crowdfunding campaigns, they have to have a minimum amount that they're trying to raise. We call it a goal or a target number in the business. But for example, if you go on Kickstarter right now and run a campaign on there, which obviously you're not selling any equity, but you're just doing a campaign to raise money based on rewards you're giving away, Kickstarter only allows you to take the money as a company once you reach the goal you set. So if you set a goal of $100,000 and you only raise $90,000, you don't get a dime of that money. It all goes back to the potential donors. That's the law as it applies to equity crowdfunding. If you say I need to raise $500,000, if you raise $499,000, every dollar goes back to the investors and the company doesn't get any of it. That's a big change from some rewards-based crowdfunding sites like Indiegogo, GoFundMe, where from the very first dollar that comes in, the company gets to keep the money, whether they produce the product or not. That's not going to be allowed in equity crowdfunding, because that obviously would clearly lead to people committing fraud. Hey, let me go in there and see how much money I can get, and if I don't have enough to do what I promise I'm going to do, I run away with it. SEC is not going to put up with that. They're right to not put up with that, and it's a perfect way to combat that blatant kind of fraud. You have to raise the amount of money that you say you need to raise in your offering under Title III equity crowdfunding, or the company does not get a penny of the money.
Yeah, and then of course you're going to have a use of proceeds saying what you're going to use the money for. So that's an easy one. Got it. And you could do different rounds. You could do $50,000 round, hit some milestones, do another round at a higher price or whatever, different milestones and that kind of stuff. So that's cool.
Yeah, listen, it's very flexible in that regard. It's a smart way to put that in.
Yeah, very cool. Okay, so number 4. How expensive is it really going to be? Like, can small companies afford to do this? Because that's the other big issue. It's like, oh, you get me this great new law and this great new exemption, but if it's going to cost me $100,000 to implement and execute, what good is that?
Right. Well, here's the thing, Greg. When the proposed rules came out for this, you know, a while back, the biggest criticism was it was a completely unusable law because of the expense. And when I wrote to the SEC and hundreds of other people also did, one of the things that we all in unison yelled at the top of our lungs is this provision that they had wanted to put into the law, that if you needed to raise more than $500,000, a company would have to have financial records that were audited, which can cost tens of thousands of dollars to do. That had to go. And the SEC wisely got rid of the provision requiring audited financials for someone using the law for the first time. So most people that will use this law probably will really only use it once and then move on to something else. But the first time you use it, there's only a requirement that the financial records are reviewed by an accountant. They don't have to be audited. And for people that don't know the difference between those two terms, you're talking about tens of thousands of dollars of expense and difference. So the SEC fixed one of the big potential cost problems. But to answer your question, it's not going to be inexpensive to use this law. And people who have raised money on a Kickstarter or Indiegogo realize, you know, first of all, statistically, less than 3% of the successful campaigns on Kickstarter. So remember, only about 36 to 40% of the campaigns on Kickstarter are successful. So we're taking a third to 40% that actually make their goal on Kickstarter, only 3% of those raise over $100,000. So you're talking about a very small percentage of crowdfunding campaigns in general that raise a lot of money. I bring that all to your attention because being in this business and having done this and worked with the best people out there, those people that raise over $100,000 generally spend a significant amount of money on marketing, and something you know very well about, Greg. Without marketing, you're not going to raise money. They're not going to raise a lot of money unless you get very lucky. So there's going to be a significant component of every one of these campaigns that has to be directed towards marketing. And marketing is not cheap. You know, sometimes it is. If you're a company that has 300,000 users of your product already, marketing is a free email to those people. And maybe you can raise the money just from them. But if you're a startup trying to get a brand out there, a concept out there, a business out there, a product out there, you don't have those 300,000 people. That's what you're trying to get. You're going to have to spend the money to reach people, to tell them about your offering, to drive them to the funding portal, and that costs money. And in some cases, you know, I don't like to put numbers on it because it can change dramatically depending on every circumstances. But you know, the average person out there on Kickstarter who's raising into the six figures and definitely at the high end of the six figures and low seven figures, they're spending over $100,000 on marketing as a general rule. So it's a $100,000 investment plus sometimes to raise $1 million. Most startups don't have that kind of money. Now, there's ways around that. There are things that are going to happen to make that work. But right now, it's going to be expensive to do this. It's not going to be free unless you just happen to have that perfect, exact model that works where you don't need to spend the marketing money.
Well, see, I think about that and I say to myself, I would even have a different point of view from you. So to me, the significance of this is we couldn't advertise our investment to people before on quote unquote a private placement. It was against the law.
Right.
So now, even if I have 1,000 friends or 500 friends or 300 friends on Facebook that know me, like me, trust me, respect me, they can share with them what I'm doing. I can ask them to share it with their friends and drive traffic to this funding portal. And it might not be hard to raise 100,000, 200,000 to get that first seed capital, hit some milestones, and then go for another round.
You're right, Greg.
Yeah, and anymore with the cost of launching businesses, especially online stuff, which we like software and technology. It's like the server cost, the human capital cost, the worldwide marketing cost. It's pretty open and effective. And then here's the other thing too. You know, I have a lot of friends that are, you know, well-educated, college degrees, that maybe even have $1 million net worth, right? So they're right at that threshold of an accredited investor, and they do and they can and they could invest in a private placement under a 506c or something of that nature or whatever. But they typically don't have enough net worth to properly diversify their portfolio to really make it make sense to add this type of investment vehicle to their portfolio. So now I think it's cool because now they can say, hey, let me put $1,000 in 50 deals, right? And they have the potential of that $1,000 making a 30 times return, right? And all of a sudden now they've made 30,000 off that 1,000 and it starts building up. Plus they can play the game. Plus they can support capitalism. Plus they can support entrepreneurship. So that's pretty cool stuff.
Well, listen, Greg, you hit the nail on the head on one thing I'd like to expound on. You're absolutely right. When I said it's going to cost money for most people, I said there are situations that are different. Now, you brought up the situation. Let's keep in mind, in crowdfunding, 80% of the money that's typically raised in most crowdfunding campaigns comes from your own social network. It comes from the people on your Facebook page, your LinkedIn profile, your Twitter account, people that you either know or have some connection to, your friends, your family, your coworkers. That's across the board in crowdfunding. That's going to still be the same thing in equity crowdfunding. The difference is most people starting a business have probably already talked to some of those people about investing. So when you go to your best friend, the first time he's going to hear about your business is probably not on your Facebook page. You've probably already talked to him about it. And whether or not they join as a result of seeing a Facebook post and give you money, it's going to be a little different in that dynamic. The fact of the matter is, when you look statistically across these things, while this is a great law, and with the proper marketing and proper budget, people can raise $1 million doing this, most people are going to struggle to raise $100,000 just going to their own social network. Most people. Some will be able to do it, but most are going to struggle doing that. So it's going to require some outreach beyond that initial bubble of friends those viral campaigns on crowdfunding campaigns, they don't just come from that bubble. They come from the next level and the next level. And getting to those people and getting them to invest is the secret to viral marketing and the hardest thing to do in crowdfunding. But those people that can solve that without spending money, they'll be able to raise a lot of money with this new law.
No, and I agree with you on the most part, but I'm going to even take another contrarian view to that as well. So, and I'll say it this way, and I know you're going to agree with this. If your deal is worthy of money, right? If your deal is worthy of money, and typically the people that are putting deals together that are worthy of investment capital, it's not hard for them to raise money.
No.
So now we're just giving them another avenue to do it. But if your deal's not worthy of money, and again, we see hundreds of deals a week, and most of them are not worthy of investors' money. Right. So, but when you become worthy, there's money everywhere.
Absolutely.
So now here's what I like about it is now you got an investment that's worthy of capital. Now you have a platform to put it on, which gives you also a little level of credibility, because these platforms are going to have some liability, some form of liability, I would assume.
Yep.
And so you have a little bit of credibility that, hey, this portal approved me. I'm on their site. And now I have a place to point people and give them all the stuff. And it helps me organize my disclosure documents, the process,
Sure,
and all that kind of stuff, which really is kind of like the numbing part for the newbies going, I don't know how to do this.
Well, it's funny to expound on that, because you're absolutely right. Good ideas never, the really great ideas never have trouble. You and I both know it's not hard to get someone to invest in a great idea with a great management team, a great product. That's not hard to do. The beauty of this law that most people don't think of, because I hear this all the time too, well, those ideas get funded anyway. Why do they need crowdfunding? Well, that's not true. They get funded a lot of times by, vulture capitalists or people that come in and say, yeah, I'll give you $1 million, but I want 60% of your company to do that, or 51% of your company, or I won't give you $1 million. So you now have the opportunity as a company to go out and say, you know what, I've got a great idea. I've got VCs ready to give me money at terrible deals for me. Let me go to the crowd and raise that $1 million and only sell 10% of the company or 20% of the company. And if it doesn't work, I can go back to the VC. But I love the fact that I like to turn that around on people, because they always say the same thing. Oh, those deals will never go on crowdfunding. Really? Well, the coolest cooler was on crowdfunding. It turned down VC money. The Pebble watch has twice raised $10 million. Brilliant product that's everywhere now. They didn't go to venture capital. The bottom line is this can be done for great products and done in a great way where you don't have to give away the farm.
I got to tell you a story. So we were just at the New Orleans Investment Conference, and I met this lady, and she goes, "Oh, you're angel investors? I love angel investors. I love everything. Oh, and I'm free enterprise capitalism." And so my pitch is like, this gives the small investor the chance to participate in something that could be big, and kind of going along with what you're saying. And then I mentioned to her, "Will you ever watch Shark Tank?" She goes, "Oh, I love and hate that show." And I go, "Well, Kevin Harrington's one of our investors, one of our partners." And she goes, "Oh, well, he's not an angel. He's not an angel. He's a shark. I want nothing to do with you." And she literally turned around and walked off. And I followed her. I'm like, "Wait, what do you mean?" She goes, "Oh no, you guys take advantage of those entrepreneurs and those sharks. He's not an angel, and I want nothing. You should have never mentioned his name, because I don't want nothing to do with Angel Network."
That's funny. Well, it's funny. People have very often referred to what we are doing here at Bankroll and what we're doing in the equity crowdfunding world as Shark Tank for the masses. But it's funny is the sharks here are not anyone but the masses. It's you people out there, the crowd out there, who decides whether to invest. You get to sit there and be Damon. You get to sit there and be Lori. You get to sit there, and be the one who makes the decision about investing. You don't have any sharks that are around like the vulture capitalists who want to just prey on startups and take advantage of them.
No, and there's so much we could talk about. We could talk for hours, and we don't have time. So I'm going to kind of wrap up a couple of thoughts.
Sure.
Because one of the big issues that I know from day one was, oh, this is just going to create this great platform for fraud. And I'm sitting here going, one thing that I read and I love about the new laws is that every FINRA-approved portal that allows us to do this as entrepreneurs and issuers is we're going to have some type of discussion board on that deal and on that board, so the quote-unquote crowd can talk about it. And what I love about this is when you really think this through, the crowd and the masses is much better at fretting out the bad actors, fretting out the bad deals, and telling what's good and bad. So there's also a risk that you think you got a good deal, you get listed on this portal. There's going to be a lot of smart people that do a lot of research and a lot of homework, and they're going to post on that discussion board, this deal sucks. I checked this out. I checked that out. I checked this out. So I think it's going to be some of the best investment opportunities as this gets, really into play that there is out there because of these discussion boards. So talk a little bit about that part of the law and what your thoughts are.
Yeah, it's a great part of the law. So the requirement is that any communications that go out about the investment, other than tombstone ads, which you can basically post on social media and direct people to the portal, any discussions about the investment for these crowdfunding opportunities has to actually take place on the portal in these discussion forums. So, and I know, I'm all over the internet, and whenever you're all over the internet, people will post things about you or vet you or Google you or find out what they can find out about you. And if there's something negative, they're going to try and put it up there and let you know. So that's what's going to happen with these investments. And I don't just say that because I'm looking into a crystal ball or I'm making this up. These types of laws have been in effect in several countries now for several years. So to give you a little bit of historical international perspective, England, Italy, Netherlands, these types of exact same campaigns have been going on there for about 4 years. We're way behind the curve. There has not been and Australia. There's not been a single instance of fraud in any international crowdfunding campaign, equity crowdfunding campaign that's been documented to date. Now, that doesn't mean it won't happen. There's been a couple that have happened on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, but the fact is, this is a different story. To do this, you've got to put your name in paperwork with the SEC. They know who you are if you're raising money. Number two, your name's going to be right there on the internet. Your picture is going to be right there on the internet. You steal from somebody, they're going to come after you. Third, everyone who does this has to undergo a bad actor check. It's a 23-point background investigation for every officer, director, or 20% shareholder of any company that tries to raise money. If you don't pass that, that prevents you from being able to raise money using this law, or at least having to disclose it in some situations. So the fact is, the true frauds, Bernie Madoff could never use this law. Fact is, there are plenty of things in place to prevent fraud from happening. Not going to say it won't, people aren't going to try, but you got to have some serious gall to go out there on the internet, put your name in front of the SEC, and then steal money from people, because they're going to know where to find you and they're going to come get you.
Right. No, and that's what it's cool about. And again, just for those of you who maybe don't understand technology and you're new to this stuff, it kind of goes back to eBay. When eBay started, I'm going to sell something to you and then you buy it from me and I don't send it to you. They had a rating system. Boom, rate. That guy sold me something. It sent it. It was broken, didn't send it. And they built one of the biggest internet plays in the world, all on this rating system. And this is going to fed out here too. So It's just, now I got one question and relates to that. I don't know if there's an answer to this, but let's say, are those going to be moderated comments from the crowdfunding portal? Let's say I got a hard on for you and I feel you did me wrong, and I just go make up stuff and I put it on the discussion board saying he did this, he did that, and you just lie about it, because you see a lot of that go on with
sure
on the internet. So will they be moderated comments, or just everything sticks?
I don't know the answer to that yet. That's one of the things that we've been trying to figure out with the rules. I do know this. If a company responds in any way or has an employee respond in any way, they have to identify themselves as being from the company. So I suspect what you're going to see is a lot of things like you see on websites. These, I don't want to name any of them because they're basically just sites that troll for people to pay them to get them off the website. But some of these sites that attack people and say horrible things about people, where anyone can post anything on there. And the response typically is that person who got attacked coming on and setting the record straight so that everyone can read what happened. That will definitely happen here. Whether or not the funding portals will be able to moderate those comments, I'm not sure yet. That's one of those big ifs, because initially that was not going to be allowed, and we have to wait and see how the FINRA rules, once they're approved by the SEC, finally shake out.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm going to get Kendall. He maybe already has this, but if not, I'm going to force his hand. I'm going to get him to create a white paper that we can download that'll have all this stuff, and it'll probably be 5, 10, who knows how many pages, but it'll have everything broken down for you. And I'm sure he's going to have some stuff on his site, Bankroll. So we'll get that for you. So I want to move on right now, so we don't got much time left here. Kendall, you're the CEO and founder of Bankroll Ventures, and the site is bankroll.ventures. It's not a .com, it's .ventures, kind of leading the way with these new domains.
Right.
And this portal was originally put together to take care of or to take advantage of two other laws that were also incorporated in the Jobs Act. One being the 506C, and the other one being the Reg A Plus. So let's take one at a time real quick and spend 5 to 7 minutes on each one. So let's talk about the Reg D 506C and what Bankroll is doing with that and why that's a significant change and helping entrepreneurs capitalize their company.
Sure. Well, 506C, or as we call it, accredited investor crowdfunding, is basically the law that was passed in 2013 that allows a company to raise money from high net worth individuals, accredited investors, angel investors. They can go after people that have a net worth of over $1 million or make over $200,000 a year individually, $300,000 a year with their spouse. And those people can invest in these private deals. This has been around forever, except in 2013 it became legal under the Jobs Act to put these online and to actually generally solicit investments for these companies. So now if you're trying to raise money from wealthy folks, you used to have to sort of do this back room, let's get in the room, let's shake hands, do I know you, do you know your customer, how long has our relationship been, let's make sure that we have now I can give you the documents to look at. You couldn't send them to people randomly in the mail, you couldn't post anything on the internet. This law changed all of that. 80 years of law overturned. You are allowed to now post it on the internet, talk about it on Facebook, talk about it on LinkedIn. You can put it on the side of a billboard or the Hindenburg if you want. You can do whatever you want to attract attention to send people to a site. We do those transactions on, those investments on Bankroll, basically for companies that need to raise money from only accredited investors. So that's 506C, and it works very much like a crowdfunding campaign. You come on, you see a video, you read the information. Once you show that you are an accredited investor, you can get all the details of the investment. And if you want to invest, you can invest right there online. That's how 506C works.
So I started sharing my screen, and I just bought up the Bankroll Ventures website so the people watching can see that. Now, see, I love that, and we know, and people that have been talking to us know that Angel Investors Network, we're working with issuers to help them do the advertising through direct mail campaigns, mailing hundreds of thousands of pieces to accredited investors to bring the leads in to help that out, and to drive people to the portal or to the issuer to raise the capital. Because it's just a game changer, because in the past we had to have that pre-existing relationship, which was so vague. The SEC could hang you from the highest tree if they wanted to, but it's just another great law that allows capital formation to really get better at what it's doing.
And Greg, by the way, that's exactly the kind of thing, like this portal, Bankroll could not exist before 506C became legal, part of the Jobs Act in 2013. Wouldn't happen. You weren't allowed to do this. You weren't allowed to send out direct mail. You weren't allowed to put a posting on your Facebook saying, I'm raising money, without even telling anybody about it. People broke the law all the time, but the fact is it was always illegal, and in many cases the SEC and FINRA came in and shut people down. So bottom line on the whole thing is it's a brand new world, and really we launched Bankroll to do one other very important thing. You can see there the registration page. Basically, when you need to see more details of some of these deals, you have to register in some cases. But this is an example here that you just put up of the kinds of things you can see on the site without registering. But when you get into the details, you have to register. We really set up Bankroll because of another part of the Jobs Act, which is what we call Title IV, or the Regulation A Plus Mini IPO.
Okay, so hold on a second, because I want to cut this video up, and I want to be able to do that. So let me finish in the 506C. So on the 506C, it's a separate exemption. You can only raise money from accredited investors. You can advertise and solicit to the general public. If somebody comes in and they are not an accredited investor, you cannot accept money from them. You have to turn them away. They have to verify they're accredited investors. So that's the other big issue, that there's a lot of people aren't clear on what they have to do to basically qualify that they are accredited investors. Right. So like with Bankroll, what does Bankroll do, and what does an issuer have to do under a 506C to comply with the laws to say that, hey, Greg Ryder is an accredited investor, or whoever?
Right. It's very simple. First of all, if you come on the site right now, Greg, as an accredited investor, and you want to see the details of any of these deals, so you can see the video, you can see some information, but if you want to know what the actual offering is and read, financial records and the PPM and all of those things, you have to check a box that says, basically, I either make more than $200,000 a year in income, or with my spouse earn a total of, $300,000 a year, or I have a net worth of over $1 million. Now, once you do that, you're allowed by law to see the documents that are, and register, so we have your name and email address. Everyone has to identify themselves. You then have the ability to see beyond what you're seeing on the screen here. You would see the actual documents where you can invest. Now, when you decide to invest, you actually have to go through a process that's done on Bankroll behind the scenes, where ultimately you are verified to actually have the status of an accredited investor. In other words, someone behind the scenes, through the magic of what goes on in the back end of Bankroll, you will be verified through one of a number of systems to make sure you actually are an accredited investor. It doesn't mean you have to mail us tax returns or anything like that. It's all done automatically through a number of different systems. Once that process is done, which takes about 24 hours in most cases, you'll be able to invest in the deal. And by the way, 506c deals, very importantly, there's no limit on how much money you can raise. If you have the ability and the product to raise $200, $300, $500 million, you can do it with a 506c. There's no limit whatsoever on what you can raise.
No, I love that. And so the last point I want to make with that is that going back to these new crowdfunding portals like Bankroll Ventures and the other ones that are soon to be coming, what I'm going to say is that, and again, Kendall's on the same page. You're only as good as your last deal, so to speak. So these portals, in Kendall's case with Bankroll, they're very picky on the kind of deals they're putting up there. There is a broker-dealer behind the scenes. So there is liability. And as we build trust and you help fund deals and you have winners, it's going to be like in the old days when I had my brokerage firm. I mean, I remember when I had my brokerage firm, we did our first deal, the stock tripled, and we had this hot new IPO, and thousands of investors came and opened up accounts with our firms, would help us perpetuate our funding abilities for the next deal, the next deal, and the next deal. And so I believe that Bankroll and some of these other crowdfunding portals are going to rise to the top as the cream of the crop of doing quality deals that help entrepreneurs raise capital, and they help create winners, just like the VC firms in Silicon Valley. It gets like the Silicon Valley, they get richer. The ones that did Google, did Facebook, did WhatsApp, they're all the same guys. Right? So I think that's going to happen here. So I'm going to applaud you for what you're doing and helping give entrepreneurs that platform to do that. Moving on to the next one. So Kendall, I know I've seen your articles. You're, again, one of the experts on the Reg A Plus. And the Reg A Plus is now a semi-private or semi-public offering where you can raise up to $50 million. And so, again, it's a little bit different, a little bit shaded different. So let's talk about the Reg A Plus and how that's different and what that's going to look like on Bankroll.
Sure. Well, Reg A Plus is Title IV of the Jobs Act. So it's still part of the same law that created this new equity crowdfunding, that created the 506c that we just talked about. It's a new law that allows a company to go out and raise from the general public, not just accredited investors, not just wealthy people. Anyone in the general public can invest in these companies. It'll look very much like Kickstarter again online. So to the public, there's not going to be a lot of difference in what they see in a Regulation A Plus mini IPO and what they see on an equity crowdfunding that's limited to $1 million, other than the fact that with a Regulation A Plus, you can raise up to $50 million, not just $1 million, but it's going to pretty much to the general public look the same. There really will be very little difference, but there's a huge difference behind the scenes on what's going on. Because with the $1 million is really the equity crowdfunding law that just came out, is really designed for startups. It's really designed for small businesses that are just trying to, to bridge that gap when the banks stopped lending. In 2008, when you couldn't get a $100,000, $200,000 loan, that's what the new equity crowdfunding law was set up for, to kind of get the banks out of the picture and let people go directly to the general public. But you stay a private company. You still control your company. You're no one has to see your financials. It's all, it basically is your company still as a private company. With Regulation A Plus, you are now entering into the world of being something of a public company, which means You have to file a whole lot of documents with the SEC. You've got ongoing reporting requirements with the SEC that are, not small. You're going to have lawyers involved. You're going to have accountants involved. You're going to obviously have a marketing budget involved. But it's a much more in-depth and expensive process, and you have ongoing reporting requirements because you now have a stock that is tradable. It's actually able to be sold. You can list that stock on an exchange if you qualify for the exchange under Regulation A+, and actually put it into the marketplace. Can't do that with equity crowdfunding, with the $1 million law. So there are big differences behind the scenes, but it's funny, to the average investor out there who goes on one of these sites, they're not going to know the difference. They're going to look at it and say, I'm buying stock in a company. To a company choosing which one makes sense for them, huge differences, A, in what you can do with your stock under each situation, and B, the cost involved in doing both of those.
Yeah, and so that's why we're excited about it, because it does allow those companies that, again, are worthy of significant amounts of money, do what you referred to in your article in our newsletter was the mini IPO, right? So, but it's really kind of a streamlined registration process. It's not as laborious and as costly as the typical registration process. My understanding is, we talked to a client or a potential client yesterday with Angel Network. They filed their Reg A+. They only got 2 comments. So again, it's that streamlined process that helps me get that offering, register with the SEC so their stock could be tradable, and it's just exciting stuff. So
yeah, you hit the nail on the head there, Greg, and real quickly, just to echo what you just said, a real registration, an S1 form, a real IPO, costs millions of dollars to do. There's just no way around it. To do it right, it costs millions of dollars, not only in legal fees and compliance fees, but ongoing reporting fees. The mini IPO is still expensive to do. It's not really priced for startups. I tell people, you need to have 6 figures probably to be able to do this in most cases. Some can do it for less. But investing $100,000 to raise $50 million is a pretty good investment. If you've got the ability to do it. Most startups can't, but this law wasn't designed for startups. So it's really out there as a great tool. I think personally it's a better tool than the new equity crowdfunding law for most companies, but will all remain to be seen over the next year how this all plays out.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Okay, so last 2 things. I really appreciate your time. So now, we met in New York, and you know that I have a company that we've invested in called Be Your Own You. It's a self-esteem lifestyle brand for women. And Bankroll is doing something very, very unique that I'm so excited to be a part of, because I just think that's an underserved niche, and I think women do make great CEOs. I think women do make great entrepreneurs, but I don't think they get their fair shake. So can you just, I know you can't divulge all the inside stuff that we're going to be releasing soon, but can you talk just a little bit about the vision behind Bankroll Women?
Right. Well, one of the things that we decided at the beginning, and when I talk about Bankroll, I'm just the CEO. There's a whole team of people involved in Bankroll, a couple of whom are very powerful and very influential women. And one of the things that we discussed in the very early days of Bankroll was, women don't really get a fair shake in the funding process. I mean, if you look statistically, women who run businesses actually have a better success record in many cases than men. Numbers-wise, it's really quite pronounced in some cases if you look at the studies. However, women have a very difficult time getting money from venture capitalists or getting money from angel investors in many cases if they're a female-owned business. I don't know why. Is it bias? Is it that most angels and most VCs are run by men? That could be. So one of the things that we decided we were going to do on Bankroll was actually set up a section for women. Bankroll Women will be for women, by women, and basically create a situation where some very powerful women are going to get together to help make sure that women-run businesses have a great chance of getting initial and ongoing funding that's very difficult for them to get in the traditional male-dominated world. And I say that as you and I, both males, are sitting here talking. It's really an interesting area, and I don't mean this as a male bashing by any means. It's just a reality. It's much more difficult for women to get funding, but you put a bunch of women together who are very powerful and wealthy and know what they're doing, who have a track record of building businesses, and all of a sudden, guess what? Women entrepreneurs are going to have a place to go to.
No, and I've kind of been in this space for the last 4 or 5 years, and the women's empowerment movement is strong. It's out there. Everybody from Michelle Obama, the First Lady, to the COO of Facebook, they're all talking about it. So it's a great niche to drive more awareness to bankroll and to women ventures. So there's one other thing that's on the bankroll site that I want you just to talk about. So let's talk a little bit. Just give me again the overall vision for the fashion fund.
Sure. Well, interestingly, one of the strategic partners that I have is a gentleman by the name of Kartik Ram, and Kartik is a very good, successful businessman who is creating a similar type, funding arena for up-and-coming fashion designers, and so Fashion Fund will be a place where up-and-coming designers and fashion tech entrepreneurs, people that are involved in the fashion world, will be able to go into one area and see, this is the latest new hot designer, this is the newest bag manufacturer, this is the newest designer in women's clothing, whatever the situation may be. And it'll be a place where those can all be congregated in one area. Of course, Bankroll will be handling all of the securities transactions behind the scenes for Fashion Fund.
No, that's exciting stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and that's why we love Kendall and we love what he's doing. And he's one of these attorneys that's actually, and again, I don't mean to bash attorneys, but
please do. No, please do.
He's one of these attorneys that actually has a personality that he's fun to be around. Not so dry, right?
Come on.
and again, we're glad to be involved with Bankroll, and we're glad to be involved with you and what we're doing. And of course, we got a lot of stuff going on. So I want to say thanks. We're right coming up on that hour mark, and that's kind of what I wanted to keep it to that. So I really do appreciate your time. You got any last comments you want to say?
No, Greg, I just want to thank you for everything you guys have done, and just to give you guys a great shout out. It's the angel investors that are out there are really the backbone of startups and small businesses, and they're going to become part of a bigger backbone now where the crowd can get involved and invest alongside them. This isn't replacing angel investing, it's supplementing it. It's a great thing for everyone, and I'm really excited that we've been able to work together, and I'm really excited, especially people in your network who have been wonderful to meet and work with. Looking forward to continuing to do this and getting opportunities out there and seeing what we can do to help people and help grow the American economy.
No, it's been fantastic. So I promised you guys, you want to get a free copy of my book for hanging in here. So all you have to do is go to Saving America, One Crowd at a Time. So where the @ symbol is, you have to put the word AT. So it's Saving America, One Crowd at a Time.com. I changed the website last night knowing I was going to do this. You can get this book for free. All you got to do is pay shipping and handling. I'm going to throw in some bonus gifts as well, and we're going to help you along those ways to get your funding going. So with that being said,
hey Greg, one last thing real quick, just so everyone out there knows, great book by Greg. He made me pay for it, so this is really a great deal for you.
Hey, and speaking of that, I need you to go to Amazon and give me a review because I haven't got any reviews on Amazon.
Well, because I had to pay for it, it's not going to be a very good review, but I'll tell everybody out there it's a good book.
That's funny stuff. All right, so this is Greg Retter, CEO of Angel Investors Network. If you want to get into our network and get our newsletter and join what we're doing, go to angelnetwork.com. You want to check out bankroll.ventures, bankroll.ventures.com. Check out what Kendall's doing. And until then, do what we do. Wake up every day with an attitude of gratitude. Tell somebody you love them. And I promise you'll have a better day. This is Greg Retter signing off.